Yeah, yeah, I was just gonna go over that today and put everything down for everybody. So. When are we starting? Right now? Okay, so for the camera, I'm Dr. Gerald Cohen, and this is a 4-part class on the 4 worlds of Kabbalistic healing. And this was the drawing from the first class, which I'm going to go over again because I think you have to hear it at least 21 times, and it only took me about 35 years to understand it, so don't expect people to get it at once. The original writings for indications were from the 2nd century, though the tradition says it went back to Abraham. And the first book was the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of formation. And it's one of the perfect books ever written in that. If you go through it in the Hebrew, there's not one extraneous letter. So every single letter has a meaning. And they talk about the counting and the realms and the different dimensions. And it's basically a mathematical formula for how reality becomes manifest. And in this tree, which we'll go over briefly, and this was from our introductory class for those, it's a model of how an idea becomes manifest and how something becomes created. So when we're looking, eventually when we've been going through the healing process, that this model tells us how things become perfectly created, but it doesn't tell us how things repair. And anybody that's had any experience in this world knows that in ourselves and in the world around us, and it needs repair. And the idea we talked about, the original meaning of sin, that there's no word in biblical Hebrew for sin. And when you understand the tree of life, you can understand the meaning. The word that was a Greek concept, it was translated as sin. In the biblical concept, it was chet, which means missing the mark. So there's no primal sin. And what that means, in that all of creations and then within ourselves, there are different aspects, and we have a very self-regulatory system, and also in the mind of the Creator there's a self-regulatory system, that when we get off center, when we miss the mark, we either go to the right or to the left, and it's designed in its various dimensions to bring us back to center unless we shut down our regulatory system. Did I lose anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are these spheral, are they similar to each other? I mean,
No.
so these are non-physical, like non-physical universes that are all different from
They actually don't exist in Kabbalah. They're actually told that they don't exist. It's meant for us to understand a process, so it's meant for teaching. Actually, a lot of the Kabbalah say that these two are one, these are all one, and they just take on different aspects of one.
This is just an abstract representation.
Right. It's a model. Yeah, it's a way of understanding. So in this model, actually, you know, as a matter of fact, it's clearly written in some of in the textbooks that Keter, which is the crown, couldn't exist because everything that exists has to come from the Nikudah, which is this little dot, the size of a pencil dot. So how could Keter exist if everything comes from there? So that's the paradox. So when you look at the model of creation, so from a human standpoint, this is the world of intention, but it's also the spiritual world that we get from reflection. It's called Atzilut, which means the best translation is emanation, how things emanate. And this is the 3 Sefirot that contain, what some people say, the spiritual world, but beyond this world, you have the roots of the tree are over here, and then it descends into what they say is luminosity, which breaks down into light. And from that, beyond the luminosity, there's infinity. And you know, when you say beyond, it's really incorrect, but even beyond the infinity, there's what's called the ion. And as soon as you translate it, you lose it. Because it's the best translation is non-existence, which means it needs existence. So for something to become conscious, it has to go through this step-down process, because if you look at, and there's actually Kabbalah, which personally is the one that I resonate with, which is Isaac Luria from the 16th century, where he talks about that the roots the light is contained in a vessel, and that if the vessel descends too rapidly, it can shatter, and when it shatters at the bottom, then it needs to be repaired, and our souls are shattered. So, and that was the teachings of Isaac Luria. Mainstream Kabbalah doesn't go into that. So if you want to know the secret, how many people heard the secret and watched some of that stuff, to see the books around? Yeah, the secret is, where it came from is basically Kabbalah, which is 4 steps, that for something to manifest, it has to have the intention. And then it goes into the mental realm, which is the next level. And that's the world of Briah, where it's also the world of nothingness. And in the spiritual realm, they would say that Binah is the level of, in scientific terms, would be the level of the vacuum. And so that would be the level where something has to become smaller to become greater. And it all emerges from the dot that comes into that contraction form, and then it needs to be stepped down, because it would be like plugging into a lamp into the Hoover Dam. So you need a transformer to make the energy usable. And this is also the level, the mental level is where it breaks down into duality. For the spiritual realm, there's no duality. That's also the level of habits. And so when things get to the right, to the left, they get too much to the left, you get too much judgment. Hi, Michael. And what a judgment means in the Kabbalistic sense is discernment or definition or distinguish. So if you take that, if you separate too much, you get pathology. So, but if you don't have that, you don't have distinction between 2 different things. A shirt becomes a cow. You don't have that. So, and on the opposite side is what's considered chesed or mercy, that's fear. And they actually, the way it pulsates into one to the other, but if it gets too much to one side, in Kabbalah they call it the Sitra Achra. If it spills, if you get dysregulated, sort of like our hormonal system, if it gets dysregulated, you get mood changes, you get bloating, you get lack of restraint, you get a lot of off-center. It's the same thing here, that if the energy that has to keep circulating back and forth for any creation to come about, if it gets stuck too much on the left, they call it Sitra Achra, that's where the alternate universes come. And so in the system of God's intention in Kabbalah, there's no evil, but evil comes about when this spills over. So if it's not tempered by kindness or mercy, you get a spillover, and they say that it forms an alternate universe. but the sense of evil is not inherent in the system. So so that's the mental world. And the mental world is where we have habits. From a scientific point of view, people feel that that's the level where all knowledge comes from. So something has to emerge from nothingness, and then this is the level of the veritable heart, and that's also the level of compassion. So when that becomes habituated at this level, it descends into the third world, which is Yetzirah, which means the world of formation. At this point, you already have something of substance, and that's also the emotional world. And that's the emotional level of individuality. It's just like our chemistry makes us into individuals, that we have infinite possibility as we convert the nutrients that we eat into neuropeptides and neurotransmitters and hormones, and it becomes the way we individual. That is on this level. This is also the level of ideas and formation, and it's a level of individuation. Yesod, which is the foundation, and notice that the foundation is from a high level. That's with a blueprint. So when you come into this world, if you in your own life, you would have a plan for your life. And that's also where the Kabbalists would say Yesod is the level of heaven. So there's 8 levels higher than heaven in the Kabbalistic model. And when that blueprint becomes born, it becomes down to the level of Malchut, which is the level of physicality, and it's the world of Asiya, which means the world of doing. So in our own lives, which we don't have time in this class to go into, if you look at everything that happens to you and step back, you'll have 6 possibilities. And the 7th one, which is the day of rest, the Sabbath, is the world of Malchut, which is sort of contradiction, is the world of doing, which is actually means the world of consciousness. So as we go through the possibilities, you become consciousness emerge. And the consciousness is based on the choices that we make.
I have another question.
Yeah.
In one scheme that I read about, 4 worlds actually were full trees. They were offset from each other. Each world had 10 spheres and so on, but they were offset from each other.
Right.
It's a different scheme than the one you're talking about.
No, because the world, as we experience this, the way it is, each sphere has the tree in it, and it goes on indefinitely. It's an infinite. So even the worlds will have its own tree. Yeah,
Well, the scheme I was talking about had the 4 worlds sort of like this, offset from each other, but complete in themselves.
Well, within each sphere, you can have the completeness. The way that I'm showing to you is the traditional, classical way of teaching.
So it's like an hologram.
Yeah. So when we experience what they make clear is the difficulty. When you think you're going up to the spiritual level, you're really just going into a reflection of the spiritual world, because it's the spiritual world in here. And it goes on and on like an acorn within an acorn. So we get the higher realms by reflection, and we never, when we're in this world, really get the whole scheme. That's what the masters have said. So in this world, which is the world of doing, and that's where we make choices. That's why we have a body, because we can move around. That's why we have the rapidity of the time, because the faster something goes, the heavier it becomes, and you have to have a limit and boundaries to have experience, and you have to have experience to have consciousness. And that manifests in that And so when people make poor choices, then they need a repair. And it's the same thing in our bodies, it's the same thing on a cellular level, that it has to be regulated. So when you understand Chet, it's really about becoming back to your center, because the Kabbalah say that the only purpose for living is to authenticate yourself and earn your existence by manifesting something that will never be manifest quite like that ever again. And it's your opportunity to complete your original design that comes from here. And there's a lot of flexibility in the design, so they said it's a general outline. So one of the people that influenced me greatly many years ago was a 14th century Kabbalist named G. Cotillier. And to me, I found almost identical is what he had to say is what the German homeopaths from the early 19th century were saying, that we come into this world with enough time